Donald Trump's recent victory is a seismic shift that echoes far beyond the usual political noise. While the headlines focus on numbers, the true impact runs much deeper. A turning point in America's cultural landscape. In this video, we'll talk about why Trump's win is more than a political comeback. We'll dive into how this election shows a growing public distrust in traditional media, the new role of independent journalists, and why identity politics might be losing its grip. From record-breaking minority support to the rise of alternative news sources, we'll examine how this election reshapes the way Americans engage with their country's future. Stay tuned as we discover why this win is so much bigger than we realize and why we might not be aware of it. The American culture war is a full-blown clash of values where traditional conservative perspectives square off against an evil Marxist ideology under the guise of liberal progressivism, and it's tearing into every fabric of the developed world society. The Biden-Harris administration has planted itself firmly on one side of this battle, promoting policies that pander to woke elites while dismissing everyday Americans as either archaic, backward, or unenlightened. And while Biden and Harris parade around with speeches on unity, their idea of togetherness looks a lot like submission to an agenda that alienates anyone who dares to question it. In this cultural battlefield, Trump's role is undeniable. Love him or loathe him, he's a force that draws out America's frustrated undercurrent. The people who've had enough of being talked down to by politicians who've never stepped foot outside their ivory towers. Trump's entire political persona thrives on the pushback against the elite, and he's made it clear that he's here to represent Americans who are sick of being told what's good for them by a government that doesn't listen. This isn't about party politics. It's a cultural stand against the establishment that's turned its back on them. This time, his win isn't just another tally in the Electoral College. It's a symbolic victory, a massive middle finger to an administration that's too busy silencing opposition to notice its own failures. Americans who felt sidelined and gaslit by mainstream narratives have made it clear that they're not falling for the same tricks twice. This is a cultural stand where the ignored, the overlooked, and the flat-out dismissed finally found a way to push back against a government that insists on treating them as second-rate citizens in their own country. For them, this election isn't merely a result. It's proof that independent thinking still has a place in America. The Biden administration, with all its pandering and posturing, can't hide from the real message here. Americans are done with being manipulated. They're done with a culture war that forces them to swallow narratives that don't match what they see happening around them. This isn't just a political rebellion. It's a cultural reckoning, and one that Biden and Harris will have a hard time dismissing as mere noise. But the culture war isn't just happening on the streets. It's raging in your living rooms too, on your screens, and on every major news outlet. And that's where the media's role in shaping this narrative, and ultimately failing to, comes in. The mainstream media has done everything in its power to shape public perception against Trump, from running relentless hit pieces to spinning stories that paint Biden and Harris as heroes of American democracy. The problem? Americans are getting wise to it. After years of bias, the media has finally succeeded in one thing: convincing people not to trust a single word they say. Trump supporters are no strangers to this. They've been watching this farce unfold since the Russia investigation, an epic tale of hyped accusations that fizzled into a costly, hollow result that gave them nothing but wasted taxpayer dollars. The media milked it for all it was worth, and when it fell apart, they just moved on like nothing ever happened. Then came the impeachments, two dramatic theatrical displays with little substance. Both attempts to impeach Trump were met with groans from anyone paying attention. And why wouldn't they be? The impeachments were politically motivated stunts dressed up as justice, a farce that drove more people away from media narratives and toward independent sources who actually seemed interested in truth, not drama. And let's not forget the media's handling of the pandemic. From the very beginning, Trump was painted as the scapegoat, held responsible for the virus itself, even while he implemented travel restrictions that his opponents initially called xenophobic. The narrative shifted constantly, but one thing remained constant. Trump was always to blame. The same media outlets that openly criticized his administration's vaccine efforts under Trump were suddenly praising Biden's approach, despite the fact that they were essentially distributing the same vaccines developed under Trump's administration. But the real kicker came in this year's election, when the media's bias was laid bare for everyone to see. Suppressed stories, like the infamous Hunter Biden laptop saga, were brushed under the rug to prevent any harm to Biden's image. Meanwhile, any story with even a whiff of negativity toward Trump was front-page news. The mainstream media's strategy was clear. If they couldn't defeat Trump with facts, they'd bury his success under a mountain of selective outrage. But Americans saw through it. The more they pushed, the more Trump supporters rallied around him, turning his win into a rejection of media manipulation. But the media wasn't the only player trying to control the narrative. Social media giants had their own game of censorship in full swing. Social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and their ilk have become more than places to share photos and connect. They're now the front line in a battle for political influence. With algorithms and selective fact-checking, these tech giants wield the power to amplify or silence voices based on their own agendas. Over the past few years, it's become clear that conservative and pro-Trump voices are especially at risk of censorship. Entire accounts have been suspended for simply voicing opinions that don't align with the prevailing woke narrative, and shadow banning has made it so some posts never reach their intended audience. So much for open discourse. These platforms didn't just silence Trump himself. They went after anyone who dared to share content that didn't toe the line. Facebook and Twitter proudly admitted to cracking down on misinformation, but it's funny how often that misinformation turned out to be conservative viewpoints. This isn't just a minor annoyance, it's a direct attempt to rewrite the narrative by erasing the voices that oppose the status quo, and people are noticing. The result? A surge in alternative platforms. Ground News and libs of TikTok have risen as havens for users tired of censorship, offering spaces where they can get a glimpse of perspectives that big tech wants to hide. Libs of TikTok, for instance, does little more than repost content already public on other platforms. But even that was enough to land it in hot water with mainstream social media. These platforms are gaining popularity precisely because they're unfiltered. People are craving real discourse, not the sterilized, pre-approved narrative tech companies spoon-feed them. The backlash against censorship has become a rallying cry. When people see their voices being silenced, they start to question who's pulling the strings and why. It's no coincidence that Trump's support has only intensified as social media giants clamp down. Each ban, shadow ban, and misinformation label serves as fuel for a movement that refuses to be shut down. Americans are starting to realize that if big tech is fighting so hard to control the narrative, maybe there's something to the views they're trying to erase. Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter couldn't have come at a better time. The platform had long been accused of censoring conservative voices, including Trump himself, during some of the most politically charged moments in recent history. Musk's move to restore free speech has sparked new life into a social media platform that many felt had become an echo chamber for left-leaning ideologies. Twitter's new era under Musk promises to level the playing field, where voices aren't suppressed based on political views, a breath of fresh air in a world where big tech has wielded its power to manipulate narratives. Just as shocking, Mark Zuckerberg publicly admitted to something Americans had long suspected. Facebook had played a hand in suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story during the 2020 elections. Zuckerberg's reveal exposes a behind-the-scenes alliance with political elites who were determined to control the outcome of the election. This wasn't just about censorship. It was about manipulating information to protect powerful figures. While media giants tried to bury the story, alternative platforms and independent voices pushed back, keeping it alive. Thanks to Musk and the unraveling of big tech's influence, the truth is finally coming to light, and Americans are beginning to see what's been hidden all along. One other thing: identity politics. The Biden administration has long clung to it, assuming that minority groups will fall in line if the right talking points are fed their way. But this election has shattered that notion. As Trump's support among African American, Hispanic, and Asian voters has surged, Trump garnered an impressive level of support from demographics that were once assumed to belong to Democrats by default. The numbers speak volumes. Trump gained record-breaking minority support, the highest level for any Republican since George W. Bush in 2004, signaling that these communities are moving beyond the shallow stereotypes that Biden's team clings to. Why the shift? The answer is simple. Minority voters are done with the condescension of identity politics. The Biden-Harris administration's approach assumes that minorities should vote based on race or ethnicity alone, as if values, policies, or economic realities don't matter. Trump, on the other hand, didn't pander. He spoke directly to people's concerns about jobs, safety, and freedom, issues that resonate universally, no matter the background. The result? Voters across demographics are rejecting the boxes they've been put in, choosing instead to align with leaders who actually address their needs and values. Trump's appeal has broken through precisely because he isn't playing the identity politics game. His message cuts across racial and ethnic lines, speaking to Americans who are tired of being told who they should vote for based on identity. Trump's win has shown that people are more than the categories imposed on them, and they're ready to make choices based on values, not labels. For the Biden administration, this shift is a reality check. People are becoming less interested in superficial promises and more invested in policies that deliver real results. This brings us to a pivotal point: the resurgence of independent thinkers in America, people who aren't drinking the mainstream media's Kool-Aid anymore. The rise of independent thinkers has shaken the foundations of the mainstream narrative, a development that Biden and Harris just can't seem to grasp. These independent-minded Americans aren't falling for neatly packaged talking points anymore. They're questioning everything, and they're tired of being spoon-fed stories designed to manipulate, not inform. Independent thinkers are rejecting the tired formulas of network news, instead turning to alternative sources that respect their intelligence and show them the unfiltered truth. These are the voters who pushed Trump's victory over the line, driven by a defiant desire to see beyond the facade crafted by the establishment. Independent media, it has exploded in popularity because it dares to challenge the mainstream. Platforms like Substack, Ground News, and other independent news outlets provide perspectives you won't see on CNN, MSNBC, or the New York Times. These journalists report without the corporate sponsorships or political alliances that dominate the mainstream. They're real people asking real questions, and Americans are taking notice. In an age where media conglomerates operate as arms of the political elite, independent journalists have filled the void, shining a light on stories traditional media conveniently ignores. Trump's win isn't just his, it's a victory for independent thinkers too. But this triumph raises a critical question: what does this mean for the future of American politics? One area to watch closely, especially for us gun owners, is the possibility of Trump dismantling the ATF. He's made bold promises about stripping the deep state of its unchecked power, and that could very well include shaking up the ATF. Under Biden, the ATF has been relentless in pushing restrictive gun regulations, creating a lot of concern for lawful gun owners, like the pistol brace rule, questionable interpretations of firearm classifications, etc. Trump's potential move to rein in or even overhaul the agency could signal a massive shift in how federal agencies handle gun rights and firearms regulations. Imagine, no more ATF. For us gun owners, this will restore the balance between law enforcement and personal freedoms. The stakes are high, and if Trump follows through, we could witness a historic shift in the federal landscape regarding gun rights. But this topic deserves a closer look on its own. If you want us to dive deeper into this, please let us know in the comments. And while you're down there, please click on the like button, share this video, and subscribe so you don't miss future content. Thanks for watching.